Hi, Ben from Noves, and today I want to show you how you can easily build an application with the Translate API. Now, I'm not a front-end dev by any means. I don't really know JavaScript very well, but luckily I have a group of assistants who are happy to write as much JavaScript as I need them to do for me. So I've actually pre-done all of the code. I didn't want you to have to wait while the AI is busily typed code, and I tried to prompt them over and over to get what we needed them to do. So all the code's been done, but I'm going to walk you through the process I went through, and then show you some of the code and show you the end result. So first of all, so Noves has a Chrome extension, which you're seeing on the screen here, which runs over the top of any block explorer on any of the 70 plus chains that we're deployed on. And whenever you're viewing a transaction, it will show you an alternate view of the transaction on top of the block explorer. You can always collapse this, and it just shows you a simplified view, tells you in English what the transaction did, and it shows you kind of an easier view of the transfers or the flows that actually mattered in that transaction. I use this all the time. It makes my life a lot quicker and easier. And I really like the way that this display looks, and I wanted to incorporate that into an application for a demo here. So first thing I did was I went to V0 and I told it that I wanted it to give me a view like some flip cards and to make it animate so that I could, oops, I did it previously. They would let me flip through the cards one at a time. It took me a couple tries to get it to give me something that was close to what I want, but this is roughly what I ended up with. And then I told it that I wanted a view that looked like this extension. So I pasted in a screenshot of the extension, and it wrote some code that looks roughly correct. I tweaked it a little bit later once I got it into my development environment. So I'm working with this as the default view, and I have the cards, the flip cards here that have the rough outline that I was looking for. Well, those didn't come out. This flip card view, there we go, this is the one. So I took the code for both of these and I brought them into a new cursor project, and I pasted them into individual files. I pasted in the flip cards as they were, and then I pasted in the transaction view. And I spent some time, prompting to get Claude to clean things up, to get the application set up and running, um, get all of the React components configured and installed and all that stuff running. Luckily, it was willing to coach me through the steps on that, since I'm not exactly well versed in getting React apps up and running. And then I asked it to combine the two files with the view that looks like our extension and the flip cards view that has the functionality. And so I ended up with a merged version of that that has the overall flip cards set up here. And then inside the flip card, instead of just having the plain card like we had here, it has the view that looks like this embedded into embedded inside each of those cards. Um, so that gave me the basic layout and something that looked roughly the way that I wanted it to look. And then we needed to hook up the data. So the first thing you're going to need to do is to go get your API key so that you can call out to the Noves services. And then what I did was I went to the Swagger, and what I want to do here is in this view, I want to have each one of these cards be a transaction in the history of a wallet. And so as you flip through these, you're kind of flipping back in time through somebody's wallet. And so The endpoint that I want to use here on translate, I'm going to build this on EVM. So the endpoint that I want to use is this TXS endpoint. So you pass it a chain and you pass it an account address or a wallet, and then it's going to give you back a list of transactions from that account, and that'll let us page back through the history of an account. So I went in here and I'm just going to click try it out. Oopsie. Click try it out. Everything's already filled in here. I'm going to run this. Okay, so I took the URL here and I brought that over into Cursor with me. And then I took this entire response and I pasted it in here into this this response file here, just saved it so that I could reference the actual output in my prompts to Cursor, or to Claude in this case. So with those two pieces, with the URL that I need to call and the format of the data that I'm going to get back, I prompted Claude and said, hey, I want to call this API, and here's how you do it. This is where you put the account address. I took out these parameters like the start and end block because I didn't care about that stuff. And I said, hey, I need to be able to call this. So it generated this, this class here to fetch transaction data. And you can see it's got the URL and it is going to pass in the wallet address there. And then I'll get to that in a minute. And then, yeah, when you call this fetch transaction data, it's just going to pass along that request, put in my API key, and grab all the data back. So then once I had that set up, I needed it to fill in data, and actually I was quite surprised that it filled practically all of the fields in here for me based on the sample one that I had. So in this thing where I'd asked it to generate it, there was enough data in these fields that I had captured in the screenshot that it had put in the static version, that after I said that we wanted to fill the data in, it actually parsed all these out and filled the individual fields in for me in the cards. I didn't even have to go through and get this set up. So at that point, it had set up the data for the title and the description, the object. You can look at this here. So if we see here, the transaction objects that you get back from Translate are simple enough that an AI is very easily able to understand what the data is. I mean, a human as well. We originally targeted humans, and it turns out that LLMs can deal really well with data that's targeted for humans. So looking at this object, it's able to guess and tell that this is the type of the transaction, which it is. It can tell that this is the meaningful description of the transaction. So it automatically filled that in, those two pieces of data in when I hooked it up to the API. And then inside of that, we have these individual transfers that explain, where they came from and any label for them, if there's a relevant label, what the token was that was transferred, and then any tokens that were coming back, the same deal. And so again, based on the descriptive nature of these fields and the screenshot that it already had, it was able to wire in these fields automatically for me without me needing to actually do any work to deal with that. So there were a few things, back to this, a few things you notice. So here we format the amounts as a decimal coming back from the API already, so you don't have to deal with knowing the number. I mean, we communicate the number of decimals, but you don't have to do the decimal conversion yourself. But we still end up with situations where we have these like really long numbers, which are accurate, but not super useful for humans. not super useful when you're viewing information. So in the extension, I can show you the live version, I guess. In the extension, we do some like prettyifying of this information. So the real number is this really long decimal, and we just summarize that up. We kind of round it in a lot of cases because it's just easier to consume. And then likewise, you can see on these addresses that we shorten those addresses, because with the full address display, it's a lot and usually not super useful to be able to see, all of the characters that are part of that transaction. So in the code here, I did have it generate a couple of simple functions. So here there's a truncate address function that basically just grabs the first 6 and the last 6 digits in the address or characters in the address, and then returns that for me. And then I gave it a couple of rules that I wanted to use for formatting the amount. So if it's a really long decimal and there's mostly zeros, it's still going to show a really long number. But otherwise, I'm going to shorten it up to only two simple things. And then also, in this case, I wanted to show swap, or if it was like an add liquidity or something like that, I didn't want it to show the sort of coded type that we send back. So here you can see the actual type is swap. And if it were add liquidity, it would be camel case. So it would be all one word, lowercase add capital liquidity. And that's not really what I want to show in the UI. So had it generate a really simple function that just splits the words in the type apart, and then makes sure that the capital letter or that the first letter of each word is capitalized, so that we get a nice looking title. And that was pretty much it as far as needing to massage the data. The rest of the data is fine the way that it comes back to basically show it directly to a user. For tokens, we have both the symbol and the name, the longer name available if we want that. If there are any tags that we can find in any sources, we aggregate multiple different sources for tags, and anywhere that we find a tag, we'll already attach the name, so we don't need to do any extra work there. So basically everything that we need in order to display these transactions nicely to the user is already there. We have some of the technical details, but realistically, in most cases, that's not that important, I don't think. Then the last thing, you'll notice in this display that we have a link on the bottom here. It says view full details. And if you click this, it takes you to a landing page that looks more like an Explorer. And it's got some additional, the technical stuff we were just talking about, detailed gas breakdown, and some options for like seeing some different views and stuff like that. And I wanted to be able to have this capability as well. And funny enough, someone else had asked a question in Discord who was working on the hackathon about whether there was a way to get that link, to get this get full details link, because it has up here, it's got a key that you have to pass along that sort of prevents this from working like an open API of its own. And it turns out that we already had an API that allowed us to get that. I didn't even know that, so appreciate someone externally helping illuminate me about that. So there's one more piece of this API client here. This was the API to call and get the list of transactions. And then there's this other API, which is part of our extension gateway, which will let you generate one of these, we call it inspector links, to a transaction. This also uses your API key, so I reused that. And when you call this, I should caveat this and say this was basically built for our own team. It wasn't polished up for external use yet, so it's a little maybe not exactly how I would have built that if I were targeting it for end users, but essentially it will give you back this key for any link. So if you say, hey, I want a link for this transaction on this chain, it's going to give you back the key, and then you can just build this URL and slap the key on the end. So, so that's what this does. So this find inspector key is going to grab that link, or rather grab the key based on that transaction hash and give you back the key, which you can use in order to build that URL. So that is that. So then inside here, let's see here. So what we wanted to do was, these are the formats. What we wanted to do was we wanted to put in a way to load an account. So added a text box and a button. So when the button is clicked, we're going to go fetch the data. And the fetch data is really simple. It calls the Noves API. It gets back a list of transactions. And then it's just going to pass those transactions in and bind it to a list of these cards. And then for each one of those, we're also going to fetch that inspector key, like I mentioned, so that we have that available in order to connect to each one of those cards. So let's see here. Here you can see, so this is where the transaction card starts. So we're using the formatted type. This format transaction type is the method that reads the type from the transaction and then reformats it with separate words and capital letters. We use the description raw right as it comes out of the transaction. We have all of the sents and receiveds items. So that's these collections here, the sent collection and the received collection, that we're going to combine in this part of the view down here. So all the sents and receives get listed in there. Every time we're displaying an address, we're going to truncate the address using that function that we wrote that just gives us a nicer, shorter address so that it doesn't take up the whole space. The name is coming straight out of the response. Same with the tokens. We take the amount, we're doing a little bit of formatting on the amount to make the number shorter, and we're displaying the symbol exactly as it comes back. And then the name and address that the transfer was sent to. And then down here you can see we're building that inspector link, and we're just passing it the key that we had stored earlier. And that's pretty much it for dealing with the data. Getting data from Noves is very easy, and it's intended to be come in a format that is already ready to use, ready to integrate, ready to display to people in general. And the rest of honestly, the thing that I spent the most time on was goofing around with trying to get the buttons to work and to do what I wanted and to get the layout tweaked a little bit. And once again, I'm no kind of front-end dev, so it was very easy to deal with the data and a lot of wrestling with AIs to try to get the output to look the way that I wanted. And so the resulting app here, we've got a simple box at the bottom with a button. I click this, it's going to go grab that data. It's going to create a card for each item in my history. And then here's that link that will take me out to the inspector for each of these, draw me right into that view. And then it's set up so that when you flip through some of the cards, it'll grab the next page and just fetch the next set of transactions. And so it'll let me keep flipping through this as far back into history as I want to go in this person's account. And yeah, it's pretty it was pretty simple, like I said, apart from the difficulty of actually dealing with JavaScript and React and the things that I'm not familiar with. So thanks a lot.